little bit of supply and demand. And yet, as soon as they moved from apples and oranges to finance, they all got hopelessly confused. So Aristotle said, interest is unnatural. I could go through a lot of people and what they said, but I'm going to just leave it at a few quotations. The Bible says interest is terrible. Judaism frowns on interest. Christianity frowns on interest. Islam frowns on interest. All the great religions of the world, crystallizing, obviously some of the most important thinking of the time, frowns on interest. So just to remind you of a few, so why do they frown on interest? Well, the idea is that, you know, you do nothing, the lender does nothing, and he gets back more than he lent to begin with. He's making a profit without having exerted any effort whatsoever. So someone named Middleton said, in trade, both parties are expected to gain, whereas in lending at usury, only the usurer could profit. So, you know, in Deuteronomy, in the Bible, so this is the Jewish Bible, it says, thou shalt not lend on usury, that just means interest, thou shalt not lend on usury to thy brother. Usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury, that's all terrible. Of course, unto a foreigner thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto a brother thou shalt not lend upon usury. Okay, so the Jews could lend to Christians, but not to each other. So the Christian church outlawed usury, called it a mortal sin. Luther, for example, says, for whoso lends that he wants it back better or more, that is open and damnable ochre. Those who do that are all daylight robbers, thieves, and ochrers. Those are little Jewish arts and tricks. So there was this antipathy towards usury, and because Jewish moneylenders were able to lend to Christians, there was an antipathy to Jewish moneylenders, which we're going to come to when we talk about Shakespeare. So Muslims also forbid lending. In fact, even today, it's illegal to charge interest in Islamic law. So in my hedge fund, we tried to raise money. I mean, there's lots of money in the Middle East. So we try, and most of it, by the way, 10 years ago, was almost all Middle Eastern money was invested in U.S. government bonds and U.S. stocks. Nothing else, like in mortgages, for instance. So I went to Saudi Arabia, and I met a bunch of brothers of the king, you know, the eldest brothers of the kings, and I suggested they invest in our hedge fund. And they actually became sort of interested, and so we had to write up a complicated contract. Now, you know, a mortgage pays interest, so if you invest in the hedge fund and the mortgage is paying interest, it looks like they're getting interest, and so that wasn't going to do. So we had to write a very elaborate contract which disguised the fact that interest was being paid, and it had to be overseen and blessed, according to Sharia law, by a holy person who was going to verify that there was no interest. Now, he charged a fee, which was 1% a year, which looked an awful lot like interest. But anyway, so the point is, all these religions have banished interest, despite the fact that they themselves were involved in interest and lending and borrowing. And so all the, you know, a world can't function really without lending and borrowing and the charging of interest. But so I don't mean to, so these religions that forbade it at the same time knew that it was going on and allowed it to go on and sometimes participated in it. But the point I'm trying to make is that there was vast confusion, and even today there's confusion because still today the Jewish law doesn't allow for interest between Jews, and there's a charade that goes on there, just like there is in Islamic law, and just like there is still frowned upon by the Christian church. So